In the beginning, before time had shape and before silence knew sound, God existed in perfect fullness. There was no darkness to oppose him and no chaos beyond his command. God, eternal and uncreated, willed creation not out of need but out of love. From his wisdom flowed purpose, and from his word flowed life. With intention and order, God began the work of creation, revealing his glory through all that would come into being. God spoke, and light burst forth where there had been only emptiness. Light separated itself from darkness, marking the first rhythm of time, day and night. This light was not merely illumination, but a declaration that God brings clarity where there is void and hope where there is nothing. The light bore witness to God's nature, showing that creation begins when God speaks, and that his word carries power beyond measure. God then shaped the heavens, stretching out the sky with precision and purpose. He separated the waters above from the waters below, forming the vast expanse that would cradle clouds, winds, and storms. The sky stood as a testimony to God's authority, declaring his sovereignty over all that moves and breathes. In this act, God demonstrated that creation is not random, but ordered, sustained by his wisdom and care. At God's command, the waters gathered, and dry land emerged. Mountains rose, valleys formed, and the earth took shape under his design. God clothed the land with vegetation, trees bearing fruit, plants yielding seed, each according to its kind. Life began to flourish, sustained by the rhythm God established. In this, God revealed himself as provider, ensuring that creation would not only exist, but thrive. God then filled the heavens with lights, the sun to govern the day, the moon to rule the night, and stars scattered across the sky in countless number. These celestial bodies marked seasons, days, and years, guiding humanity through time. Each star reflected God's majesty, reminding all who look upward that his power is vast, yet his attention is precise. Nothing in creation exists outside his awareness. The seas came alive, God's word. Creatures of every form and size moved through the waters, and birds took flight across the skies. God blessed them, commanding them to multiply and fill their realms. Life responded to his voice with abundance, demonstrating that God's blessing brings growth, movement, and purpose. Creation was no longer silent. It echoed with life. God then formed living creatures on the land, animals great and small, each designed with care and balance. Every creature had its place, its role, and its purpose within God's order. Nothing was wasted, nothing overlooked. Through this diversity, God revealed his creativity and wisdom, showing that unity does not require sameness but harmony. Finally, God created humanity in his own image. He formed mankind with intention, breathing life into them and setting them apart from all other creation. Humanity was entrusted with responsibility to care for the earth, to steward creation, and to walk in relationship with God. In humanity, God placed reflection of his character, the ability to love, reason, create, and choose. Creation reached its culmination not in power, but in relationship. God looked upon all he had made and declared it very good. There was balance, beauty, and peace. Creation rested in harmony with its creator, sustained by his presence and guided by his purpose. God rested, not from exhaustion, but to establish a rhythm of rest, teaching that creation flourishes when aligned with his order. And wisdom, the creation of the world, reveals God's nature, his power, his intentionality, his generosity, and his love. Everything that exists testifies to his voice, his authority, and his desire for relationship. The world was not formed by chance, but by divine will, shaped by a God who creates with meaning and sustains with care. Even now, creation continues to speak. The skies declare his glory, the earth reveals his handiwork, and life itself bears witness to his sustaining power. From the smallest seed to the vastness of the universe, all creation points back to God, the author of life, the source of order, and the beginning of all things. And still today, the same God who spoke the world into existence continues to speak to hearts, to lives, and to generations, calling humanity to recognize him, trust him, and walk in the purpose for which they were created. After creation was complete, God did not withdraw from the world he made. He remained present, sustaining all things by his power and wisdom. Every sunrise, every season, and every breath of life testified to his continued care. Creation was not abandoned to chance. It was held together by God's word. The same voice that spoke light into existence continued to uphold the universe, ensuring that life endured according to his design. God placed humanity within creation not as owners but as stewards. The earth was entrusted to human care, reflecting God's desire for partnership rather than domination. Through this responsibility, humanity was invited to mirror God's character, cultivating, protecting, and nurturing life. Stewardship was meant to reflect obedience, humility, and gratitude, recognizing that all things ultimately belong to God. In the early harmony of creation, humanity walked in closeness with God. There was no fear, no separation, and no shame, only fellowship. God's presence was not distant but personal, demonstrating his desire for relationship rather than mere authority. This intimacy revealed that creation was never meant to function independently of its creator, but in continual communion with him. Yet, God also granted humanity the freedom to choose. Love, by its nature, cannot be forced. With freedom came responsibility, and with choice came consequence. When humanity turned away from God's wisdom, creation itself felt the effects. Disorder entered where harmony once reigned, and separation replaced closeness. Still, even in humanity's failure, God's mercy remained present. God did not abandon his creation in its brokenness. Instead, he began a work of restoration, guiding humanity through promises, covenants, and acts of grace. The unfolding story of creation became not only a story of beginnings, but of redemption. God's patience and faithfulness revealed that his purposes extend beyond human failure and that his love endures despite rebellion. Throughout history, creation itself has continued to reflect God's faithfulness. The cycles of seasons, the renewal of life, and the sustaining order of the universe serve as reminders that God remains in control. Even in a world marked by brokenness, his design continues to hold, pointing toward restoration rather than destruction. God's creative power is not limited to the physical world. Just as he spoke light into darkness at the beginning, he continues to bring light into human hearts. He restores what is broken, renews what is weary, and creates hope where despair once ruled. Creation, therefore, is not only a past event but an ongoing reality. God continually at work. The story of creation ultimately points toward God's desire to dwell with humanity. From the first act of creation to the promise of renewal, God's purpose has remained constant. Relationship. The world was formed as a place where God's presence could be known and his glory revealed through love, order, and life. Even now, creation waits with expectation for full restoration. The same God who began the work will bring it to completion. His creative word, which once shaped the universe, continues to guide history toward redemption and renewal. Nothing he has made is forgotten, and nothing lies beyond his power to restore. And so, the creation of the world stands as both a foundation and a promise. Reminder that God is the beginning of all things and the restorer of all things. From the first light to the final renewal, creation declares that God is faithful, powerful, and eternally present. From the beginning, God designed creation to reflect His glory and goodness. Every detail, from the smallest seed to the vastness of the heavens, was shaped with intention. Creation was meant to be a visible testimony of an invisible God, revealing His wisdom, order, and care. Through beauty, balance, and life itself, the world declared that it was formed by a loving Creator, not by accident or chance. Though humanity's choices introduced brokenness into the world, God's purpose for creation never changed. He remained faithful, working patiently through history to restore what had been damaged. The earth continued to bear fruit, the seasons continued their rhythm, and life endured, all sustained by God's mercy. Even in a fallen world, creation still whispered of God's faithfulness and His promise of renewal. God continued to reveal Himself through creation. The thunder spoke of His power, the gentle rain of His provision, and the stars of His vastness beyond human understanding. Nature became a reminder that God is both mighty and tender, capable of shaping galaxies and caring for individual lives. Through creation, God invited humanity to look beyond what is seen and recognize the hand of the Creator behind it all. As generations passed, God made His purposes known. Through promises and guidance, He reminded humanity that creation was not meant to remain in brokenness forever. From the earliest moments, God's plan pointed toward restoration, a future where harmony between Creator and creation would be renewed. Creation itself became part of this story, waiting for healing and fulfillment. God's creative power extends beyond forming the physical world. It reaches into the human heart. Just as He formed the earth from nothing, He renews hearts weighed down by fear, guilt, and despair. God continues to create, bringing hope where there is darkness, peace where there is chaos, and life where there was once emptiness. His creative work did not end with the world's beginning. It continues in every life touched by His grace. Creation also teaches humanity humility. It reminds us that we are part of something greater than ourselves, dependent on forces we did not create and cannot control. The rising sun, the changing seasons, and the breath in our lungs all testify that life is sustained by God's hand. In recognizing this, humanity is called to live with gratitude, responsibility, and reverence toward the Creator. God's ultimate intention for creation is restoration, not destruction. The same God who once said, "Let there be light," continues to speak hope into a world longing for renewal. Creation points forward to a time when brokenness will be healed, justice restored, and peace fully realized. This promise anchors faith and gives meaning to the present, even amid suffering and uncertainty. In the fullness of time, God would reveal His restorative purpose more clearly, showing that creation and redemption are inseparable. The world was created through love, and it will be renewed through love. God's plan has always been to dwell with humanity, to restore what was lost, and to bring creation into perfect harmony once again. Until that day, creation continues to testify. Every sunrise speaks of new beginnings. Every growing seed speaks of hope. Every breath reminds humanity that God is near, sustaining life. Moment by moment, the world itself becomes a silent sermon, declaring that God is faithful, patient, and endlessly creative. And so the story of creation remains alive not only in the past, but in the present and the future. It calls humanity to remember its Creator, to honor His design, and to trust in His promise of renewal. From the first light to the final restoration, creation proclaims one enduring truth. God is the source of all life, the sustainer of all things, and the author of hope eternal. Creation not only reveals God's power but also His patience. From the earliest days, God allowed the world to unfold under his watchful care, guiding history without forcing it. He worked through time, through people, and through promise, allowing humanity to grow in understanding while never withdrawing his presence. This patience reflects a creator who values relationship over control and faith over compulsion. God's voice, which once shaped oceans and skies, continued to speak through conscience, wisdom, and truth. He called humanity back toward himself, reminding them that life finds its meaning only when rooted in him. Even when people turned away, God continued to provide, protect, and
sustain creation.
his mercy flowed quietly, often unnoticed, yet always sufficient. Creation itself bears the scars of humanity's choices, yet it remains sustained by God's grace. The earth still produces food, the rain still falls, and life continues despite disorder. This endurance testifies that God's mercy outweighs judgment and that his commitment to creation remains unbroken. Every act of preservation reflects his promise not to abandon what he has made. Through creation, God teaches humanity about dependence. No person controls the rising of the sun or the rhythm of the seasons. Life is received, not manufactured. This dependence is not weakness but design, reminding humanity that trust in the Creator brings stability, peace, and purpose. Creation calls humanity to humility and gratitude, drawing hearts back to the one who gives life freely. God's creative purpose also includes justice and restoration. He is not indifferent to suffering or disorder. From the beginning, his design was harmony between humanity, creation, and himself. Though brokenness entered the world, God's intention to restore it never faded. Creation itself waits in hope, longing for the day when renewal will be complete and peace fully restored. God's creative work finds its ultimate meaning in relationship. The world was not made merely to exist, but to be known and loved by its Creator. Every element of creation serves as an invitation to recognize God's presence, to respond with worship, and to live in alignment with his purpose. Creation calls humanity to listen, reflect, and return to the one who formed them. As history continues, God remains faithful to his promise of renewal. Just as creation began with order and light, it will one day be fully restored in righteousness and peace. The same power that formed the heavens will heal what has been broken. This promise gives hope to every generation, assuring that suffering, chaos, and darkness will not have the final word. Even now, God continues to create. He restores lives, renews minds, and brings light into darkness. His creative word still moves, shaping hearts and guiding paths. Creation did not end in the past. It continues wherever God's truth is received and his purpose embraced. The story of creation is therefore not only about beginnings, but about destiny. It points forward to restoration, reconciliation, and renewal. Reminds humanity that the world has meaning, life has purpose, and God remains actively involved in all that he has made. And so, creation stands as a living testimony, declaring that God is eternal, faithful, and present. From the first moment of existence to the unfolding future, all creation proclaims that God alone is the source of life, the sustainer of hope, and the creator of all things. From generation to generation, God's creation has continued to speak, even when humanity has struggled to listen. The wind that moves unseen, the oceans that obey unseen boundaries, and the stars that remain fixed in their courses all bear witness to a creator who governs with wisdom and restraint. Creation does not rebel against its maker. It follows his command faithfully, reminding humanity of the order and trust that once defined their relationship with God. God's desire has always been that humanity would learn from creation itself. The patience of the earth teaches endurance, the growth of seeds teaches hope, and The returning dawn teaches renewal. These patterns were placed within creation to remind humanity that despair is never final and that God's purposes unfold in seasons. Even when progress feels slow or invisible, God is still at work beneath the surface. Though the world has known pain, division, and loss, God's sustaining power has never been withdrawn. Life continues because His mercy continues. Every breath is a gift, every day an opportunity for restoration. God remains attentive to creation's cries and humanity's suffering, working quietly yet powerfully to bring healing, justice, and renewal according to His perfect timing. Creation also reflects God's faithfulness to His promises. Just as the earth continues its cycles without fail, God remains steadfast in His word. He does not abandon what He has begun. The same commitment that brought the world into being continues to uphold it, ensuring that history moves not toward chaos, but toward fulfillment and restoration. God's creative authority is matched by His compassion. He is not distant from the world He formed, nor indifferent to its struggles. He walks with humanity through hardship, offering guidance, comfort, and hope. His nearness reminds creation that its Creator is also its sustainer, deeply invested in the well-being of all He has made. The purpose of creation extends beyond survival. It points toward transformation. God intends not only to preserve the world, but to renew it. Brokenness, suffering, and decay are not permanent conditions. Creation itself longs for restoration, anticipating the day when harmony will be fully restored and God's original design revealed in its fullness. Until that time, humanity is called to live with awareness, recognizing God's presence in every aspect of creation. The earth is not merely a resource to be used, but a sacred trust to be honored. Caring for creation becomes an act of worship, reflecting gratitude to the One who formed it and entrusted it to human care. God continues to call humanity back to Himself through creation's quiet testimony. In moments of stillness, beauty, and wonder, hearts are drawn toward the Creator. Creation invites reflection, humility, and reverence, reminding humanity that life finds its deepest meaning not in possession or power, but in relationship with God. The story of creation is therefore inseparable from the story of hope. It assures humanity that the world has purpose, that history has direction, and that God's love remains active. From the first moment of existence to the promise of renewal, creation proclaims that God is faithful and that His work is not yet complete. And so, as the world continues to turn and life continues to unfold, creation stands as a living witness, declaring that God reigns, God sustains, and God restores. All that exists flows from His will, endures by His mercy, and moves toward the fulfillment of His eternal purpose. God's creation, though perfect at the beginning, was never left incomplete. Though humanity's choices brought brokenness into the world, God's plan for restoration has always been in motion. From the first moment of creation, He wove a promise of redemption into the fabric of the universe, a plan to bring all things back into harmony with His will. Every living thing, every sunrise, every seed, and every heartbeat carries the whisper of His intention to heal, restore, and renew. Even as creation bore the marks of human disobedience, God remained active. He did not abandon the world He had formed. The cycles of nature, the resilience of life, and the continuing abundance of the earth testify to His sustaining hand. Through storms and seasons, through growth and decay, God's presence remained constant, demonstrating that His commitment to creation transcends failure and human misunderstanding. God's plan of redemption is not limited to the physical world, but extends to humanity itself. He calls each person back into relationship, offering forgiveness, guidance, and the power to overcome the brokenness within. Humanity was created in his image, and though that image was marred by sin, God's creative and restorative power is sufficient to renew it. Just as he shaped the earth from nothing, he shapes hearts, minds, and lives into instruments of his glory. The promise of new creation is echoed in every act of God's ongoing work. Rivers carve valleys, trees grow from barren soil, and life finds a way even in the harshest conditions. These patterns remind humanity that God's restorative power is active, patient, and enduring. Restoration may take time, but it is certain God does not abandon what he has made, nor does he allow his purpose to fail. Through Scripture and through the life of Jesus Christ, God reveals the ultimate fulfillment of his creative work. Jesus is the Word made flesh, the divine presence through whom the world was created, and through whom it will be redeemed. In him, the promise of new creation becomes reality. Life, light, and hope are restored to humanity, and the brokenness of the past is healed in his perfect love. Creation itself longs for this redemption. The earth, groaning under the weight of decay, anticipates the day when all things will be made new. Mountains and valleys, oceans and skies, plants and animals, all await the fulfillment of God's restoration plan. Every aspect of creation is included in the scope of his redemptive work, showing that nothing is forgotten, nothing is beyond his care, and nothing is beyond his power to renew. God's redemption is both personal and cosmic. Humanity is restored in heart and spirit, while creation itself is renewed in purpose and glory. The same God who spoke light into darkness now restores light to lives darkened by sin, despair, or neglect. Through faith, obedience, and trust, humanity participates in the ongoing work of creation and redemption, cooperating with God to bring harmony, justice, and beauty into the world. Even now, God continues his creative work. He speaks into hearts, restores broken relationships, heals the wounded, and brings life where there was decay. The story of creation has not ended, it is unfolding still. Each act of restoration, every moment of grace, and every instance of new life is part of the ongoing testimony that God is creator, sustainer, and redeemer. The ultimate hope of creation is a day when heaven and earth are fully reconciled, when brokenness is completely healed, and when humanity and all creation dwell together in perfect harmony with God. The first act of creation, light in the darkness, was only the beginning. The final act will be the renewal of all things, when God's glory fills the earth as fully as it does the heavens, and his love restores everything to its intended perfection. God's ultimate plan for creation is not merely preservation, but renewal. The brokenness introduced by sin and human choice is not the end of the story. God's creative power extends beyond what was formed in the beginning. It reaches forward into the future, toward the fulfillment of his promise that all things will be made new. Every tear, every wound, every shadow of despair is seen by God and will ultimately be transformed by his glory. Through Jesus Christ, God initiated the first steps of this new creation. In him, heaven touched earth. Life was restored where death once ruled. Hope was renewed where despair had lingered, and light shone into the deepest darkness. Jesus' life, death, and resurrection demonstrate that God's plan was never limited to the physical world alone. It encompasses human hearts, relationships, communities, and even the natural order itself. Creation and redemption are intertwined, and in Christ, they meet. The new creation is marked by harmony, peace, and the fullness of God's presence. Just as God once spoke the universe into being, he now speaks life into brokenness, light into darkness, and hope into despair. The natural world reflects this restoration. Rivers will flow clean, deserts will bloom, and the earth will yield abundant life, reflecting the perfect order God intended. From the beginning, Every creature and every human being participates in this restored harmony. Humanity, created in God's image, is central to this redemption. Each person is invited to partake in God's creative work, restoring broken relationships, loving one another, and caring for the earth. Through faith, obedience, and participation in God's plan, humanity becomes co-laborers with the Creator, reflecting His glory in ways that mirror His own love, justice, and mercy. This is the true fulfillment of God's original design for humankind. Even creation itself groans in anticipation of its full restoration. Mountains, rivers, oceans, and skies all bear witness to God's ongoing work. They wait with eager expectation for the day when God's purposes are fully realized, when disorder will be removed, suffering will cease, and beauty and life will be renewed. In every corner of the world, God's promise encompasses not just humanity, but every aspect of the created order. The promise of new creation offers hope to the weary and the broken. It assures humanity that no failure is final and no sorrow is permanent. God's restorative power is greater than any shadow of destruction, and His love reaches further than the deepest pain. In this hope, every act of kindness, every step of faith, and every gesture of mercy participates in the renewal of the world. Humanity becomes an instrument through which God's restoration touches reality. Through Jesus, God makes clear that the new creation is not a distant dream, but a present reality in progress. Every healed heart, every reconciled relationship, and every act of faithful love is a glimpse of the fullness of His kingdom. Creation itself is renewed gradually as humanity aligns with God's will and participates in His ongoing work of restoration. God's plan unfolds not only in cosmic events but in daily life. Ultimately, the story of creation points toward God's unending desire for relationship with His creation. From the first light to the promise of full restoration, God demonstrates that He is faithful, merciful, and loving. He invites humanity to walk with Him, to trust Him, and to participate in His work of making all things new. The new creation is both God's gift and humanity's calling, a world restored, a life renewed, and a relationship perfected. And so, the narrative of creation reaches forward into eternity. The God who spoke the stars into existence now speaks hope, peace, and life into every heart that listens. The world, though marred by sin and brokenness, moves steadily toward redemption, guided by the wisdom and power of its Creator. All of creation, human and natural alike, bears witness to God's enduring promise that all things will be made new and His glory will fill the earth as it fills the heavens.